Yo, welcome to another YouTube video. Listen, ladies and gents, aside from the little pimple on my face and my unshaven appearance from studying too hard, let me just say this, alright? I'm doing this video because, number one, a lot of people have been asking me about the pulse cell. And it seems to me that a lot of misinformation has been spread about the pulse cell. Now, the people's champion has decided to go into the mathematics of this, because normally I do not go into the math. All right, usually I just figure that people will trust me because you know, I don't want to spend ages explaining the math. But you know what, for this particular cell, I'm gonna have to go in depth about the mathematics behind it, because quite frankly, I think a lot of people, what the hell is this clown Asian smacker doing? Anyway, I think that a lot of people do not understand how the mechanics of things work. So I'm actually going to do the math behind the scene to show y'all why you do not need the pulse cell, and why the Cunning cell is in fact still better than the pulse cell, and how the breakdown of all this damage works. Okay, so we're going to get into that. It's going to be a math lesson. It's going to be a math lesson. This is not a build video. This is a math lesson. All right, but thank you, Lewis, by the way, feeding me on a daily basis here, man. This guy's too nice. Thank you so much, man. I swear when I get my new gaming mouse, it's practically going to be sponsored by you. Thank you so much. All right, let's get into the math before we go any further into this, because, you know, I want to showcase how things work. Now, okay, I shouldn't have said math first. First, I got to get into the word shit. So I'm going to open up my shitty Microsoft Word. Okay, I'm going to get that on screen right now. Screen capture. Microsoft Word. Where the fuck is Microsoft Word? I see Excel. Oh, there it is. Phew. Okay, let's get the Word document up there. All right. I'm gonna just put this behind my camera. Okay. So the reason why I'm doing this is solely because I just want you guys to understand the formulations. All right. Let's make it big as shit, so y'all can understand. So the formula is, okay, let me move this little cowlick over here so I don't look as ugly as I normally would be. You know, semi-ugly is okay, totally ugly cannot. Okay, people's champion needs to look at least somewhat, you know, intelligible here. All right, so let's say, for instance, all right, damage, okay, to get your average DPS, okay, the formula is damage multiplied by 1. Okay, we put it in brackets. Now this is why you got to learn your algebra, all right? Plus raw damage percentage increase, okay, multiplied by 1. Now the reason why the 1 is there, because your crit is either going to do more than 1 or 1. 1 standing for 100%. Y'all did percentages, right? Okay, so this should make sense to you. Crit damage percent plus, multiplied by your crit rate percent. Okay? And then multiplied by 1 plus attack speed percentage. Now, just to get into the breakdown of this formula, all right, the reason why it multiplies in this way is, number one, let's say you do, all right, 100 damage, all right, as your base, and you have 1 plus your predator, so that's 35%. Now, just for posterity, I'm just putting it here. Predator goes 35%. Okay, let's just put tenacious in, plus 32%. Plus your predator, which is 35%, so tenacious. Now this is with no berserker. If you have berserker, with berserker plus 6, you're looking at 26%, and it's 28% with berserker plus 3. This is gonna be relevant for later, all right? But let's say without any tenacious or what? Without any berserker, all right? Multiplied by, let's say you've got 1 plus, now your base is always going to be 50%. Then you add cunning, so cunning is 30% right here, multiplied. Now technically speaking, you want to do this formulation in Excel, you got to do it this way. I will take a shortcut later in Excel just to show you. And then you got to multiply this, because remember, this is your crit damage multiplied by your crit rate. Your crit rate, let's say you're doing a Half-Life build, your maximum crit rate is going to be 17.5%, which is okay, sorry, your maximum is going to be 25%, which is your discipline plus 6 and your cunning plus 6. All right, okay, that is what it looks like. And then you multiply by your attack speed, so maybe 1 plus, let's say, 20%. All right, that's what the formulation is going to look like. Okay, so you're seeing how all this comes together. Now, why is raw damage here? Because raw damage is a straight up increase on whatever damage you're doing. Let's say you've got maxed out Berserker. In your normal hit is 100, you'll be hitting for 135. Then you multiply that by your opportunity for a crit rate. Now, if you don't crit, you're just going to be doing the 135. But if you do crit, okay, you'd be doing 135 multiplied by your crit damage, which is 1.8. all right, but because your crit rate is not guaranteed, you have to get an average, you multiply it by a percent, which is your crit rate, and then the whole damn thing gets multiplied by your attack speed, because your attack speed comes in at the end to, like, for example, let's say you got an attack speed of 20, you're doing everything 20% faster, which is why the attack speed mathematics is at the end. All right, so I hope you understand this formulation. Now, if it's getting too much for you, then that is why you shouldn't listen to the people that don't understand math, who talk about pulse cells and all that shit, because I'm about to go to town on this math. All right, the people's champion is not just a champion on his show. The people's champion is smart up here. That's why I'm going to show you the breakdowns. Okay, now that you understand roughly how the math works, let's go into Excel. Now, this is going to be a whole bunch of math. All right, but I'm going to try and explain it as best I can. Okay, so follow me closely. All right, you understand this formula, right? Raw damage first, crit damage, then your attack speed at the end. Now, I've actually also gone into another concept before I get into the math. All right, I always tell people this. The most important things to add is, in terms of priority, attack speed. The reason why, attack speed buffs the whole damn equation. All right, so attack speed is first. Next, raw damage, because raw damage is your first line. You want to add that first. Next, you want your crit rate, and then crit damage. Now, in other comments and replies, you might see this instead. And the reason why is because actually, crit damage and crit rate are roughly the same. To be fair, to be absolutely fair, crit damage and crit rate are actually the same. But me personally, crit rate or crit damage, whichever one comes first, you can actually write it like that and it'll still be the same. For me, the most important thing is here, because Dauntless is not a game where you can stack crits. There are caps and limits. And that's why it's been a problem for so long before Tenacious came along. And now with Tenacious being the only one where you can stack crits, the formulas have changed. All right, let's go into the actual mathematics now. Okay, y'all still following, right? Y'all haven't fallen asleep yet, right? Okay, and I'm just put the regular formula here. Actually, you know what? I think I prefer this equation this way. Anyway, doesn't matter, because usually this is the part that I focus on anyway. Okay, let me go and get Excel up and running. Okay, let's do this. What does it say? Product activation failed. Oh well, fuck it, doesn't matter. All right, let's get into it, yeah. All right, now let me hide all these horrifying numbers first, because you don't need to see those yet. I will unhide them later. First thing I want to show you is this. Okay. When you're dealing with raw damage, all right? When you're dealing with raw damage. Now, do you remember this formula? This formula was from earlier. Okay, let's talk about it at a very, very low baseline crit. Okay, 1,000 shields on your Tenacious, okay, is very easy to achieve. All right, so that's 1,000. Now, every 50 shields is going to be 1% crit rate. If you have 1,000 shields, which is easy to achieve, all right, that's 50. 50 goes 20 times into 1,000, all right, because 50 times 10 is 500. 500 times 2 is 1,000, all right, so that's 20%. Now, if you have a Fortress cell, I've calculated this before in many of my builds, that's an extra 7%. All right, so your raw damage crit rate at 1,000 shields, all right, this is your average DPS at 1,000 shields. So at 1,000 shields, okay, now the cells that I've got in there with Berserker, okay, that's 35% at max, okay, with Berserker, with Predator, 35%, and with Tenacious, all right, that's 26%. Okay, your raw. Hang on, I'm gonna try to log back into the game because I hate the theme music. Okay, your raw damage. Let's talk about it. Your raw damage here, okay, as you can see, I've got the 1 plus 35% plus 26% plus 35%. All right, 35, 35, 26. The reason why I structure it in this way is because I calculate things on my own terms. Okay, otherwise you can structure 35, 35, 26. It's not gonna matter. You understand math, right? Okay, here we go. Now, your normal baseline crit rate, baseline crit damage, okay, is 50%. Okay, that's where your 50 come in. Baseline crit rate with Fortress is 7%. All right, that comes from 375 shields. Okay, divided by 50. Okay, that's 7 times 50. 7 times 50 is actually 350, but the 25 shields don't exactly count, right? Okay. Now, baseline crit rate with Cunning, 10%. Baseline crit rate with Pulse. Now, Pulse is special. Pulse goes 20% effective. And the reason why I put effective is because Pulse doesn't actually add any crit rate to it. If you look at the cell description for a +6 Pulse, okay, hang on. I'm gonna temporarily showcase this, okay? If you look at the Pulse cell, every 5th hit with your weapon is a critical hit. And that's a 15% critical strike damage increase. Okay? So every 5th hit means that 1 out of every 5 hits is a critical. Okay? So that means non-crit, 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 crit. Okay? That's a 20% rate. 1 divided by 5 is 20%. You can do the math yourself. Okay? It's very basic math. But y'all need the proof, okay? 1 divided by 5, 20% right there. Let's convert it to a percentage. Boom, bada bing, bada boom. Okay, you're seeing it. You're seeing it, right? Okay. Now, let's go into the formulas. Let's say let's go totally baseline. At 0 shields. Okay, at 0 gained shields. Okay? Your raw damage average DPS is gonna look something like this. 100 raw damage. Okay, this is with my survival builds that I put up there, you know, the end game builds that I put up. Okay, 100 multiplied by 1 plus Berserker, Tenacious, Predator, and your crit rate damage is 50%, and your natural shields 7%. So your average DPS to start things off with, sorry about that, is 202. Okay. What about if I did my Cunning build? Okay, now with my Cunning build, things get very different very quickly. With my Cunning build, I have, this is the Hyper Demon Hunter build that I've been using. Okay, with the Chain Blades, I have Predator, Tenacious, and 20%, which is Berserker plus 3. Okay, that's where this 20% is coming from. Now, Cunning gives me the 30% damage here, so 50% plus the 30% from Cunning gives you the 80% here. Okay, I don't need to show this here, right? You can follow. Okay, 50% plus 30% is 80%. That makes sense, right? Okay, 80% multiplied by 10%. Okay, and the 1 at the end is your attack speed, which remains unchanged for any of these. Okay, you can use these formulas yourself in your Excel if you want to start playing around with attack speed and things like this. But anyway, what is your baseline DPS looking like? You'll notice it's actually lower. It's actually lower. All right. Despite the fact that your crit damage and crit rate are higher than in the raw version, your overall average DPS has dropped by a lot. You see where I'm going? This is why raw damage is so important. This is why I don't focus on situational damage like overpowered, whatever else, because that is not raw damage. Raw damage comes from Berserker, Predator, Tenacious, because it's always active. Rage. Rage is also raw damage. Okay? Now, Pulse. Let's look at Pulse. Pulse has a baseline 20%, right? So same thing, 35 is your Berserker, Tenacious. Predator, Tenacious, this is your Berserker at 20%. Now, Pulse gets 20% baseline. It looks like it's great. Wow, 204. So it's doing better than your Raw. Is that really the case? Is that really the case? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Okay? Let's talk about it. Now, this is where the math is going to get interesting. Okay? This is where the math is going to get interesting. At a baseline of 20%, which is 1,000 shields, very easy to reach, we're going to modify this formula to say 27 right there. Okay? Your Raw has gone up to 222.46 average DPS. What about this? Now at 1,000 shields, this one gets a 30% rate. Why? Because Cunning adds baseline 20%. So this, what's this? Your Cunning has overtaken the Raw. Are you starting to follow me here? What about this? You've now got 20,000 shields. Sorry, you've got 1,000 shields, which is 20% rate. This doesn't move. Why? Because this is an effective rate. Now your crit rate is actually equal to your effective rate. All right, and you're going to see the breakdown in the mathematics a little later. So hold up a second. Pulse hasn't moved. Why? Because your 20% was not an actual crit rate beforehand. It was just a guaranteed flat 20% from the fact that every 5th hit is a crit. Now, if you were to have a crit rate, a natural crit rate of 20%, this effective rate doesn't move. Why? Because every swing that you do, you have a 20% chance of getting a crit. All right, so this formula is correct, but it's just that every 5th swing is guaranteed. So, are you starting to see where the average DPS starts to meter out? Okay, let's now, the numbers that I'm going to play with, let's go into the grand finale here. I find it very easy to reach about 1,500 shields on average. In even my fastest fights, I'm usually at 1,500 shields. That's 30%, okay? So let's play with these numbers. With the Raw, it goes to 37. Why? 7% from Fortress and the 1,500 shields that I gain naturally, okay? So 37. This is the number, this is the average number that I like to play with. For your Cunning build, you get to go up to 40. So put the 40 here. Okay. Cunning is better. And Pulse, now, finally it moves. You get up to 30. So Pulse is still lagging behind severely. Okay, why? Because Cunning adds so much more damage and adds to your effective rate. Okay. Now, on average, when I break down the numbers, all right, and we use your average DPS, the reason why I want to showcase this is because it's not fair for Pulse just to get an effective rate. Okay, let's give Pulse its actual average damage of 30%. Okay, and then let's further on. Okay, let's make sure that we calculate every fifth hit as a full shot. Okay? All right. Now this is where it's going to get interesting. Because this is where a lot of people argue that Pulse is better than the Raw. Okay, it may seem like it's better because of every fifth hit, but over a series of 20 hits in total, all right, do you see the numbers up there? 1 to 20. All right, I took a sum of everything here and then divided it by 20. So sum of this whole set divided by 20. All right, so over 20 hits, the average DPS for your Raw, of course, for the Raw and Cunning, it doesn't change because the this thing is sort of like priced in already. All right, so the average is just like that. But for Pulse, it's different. Every fifth hit, you are guaranteed your full damage, right? So this is where the average doesn't actually show what Pulse is capable of. But is it better than Cunning? Let's have a look. If you were to use Pulse as average, right, with every fifth hit being guaranteed, and you go all the way till the end, all right, remember I talked about these being the averages? Your Raw final average is the same as the calculated average, 232.26. Your Cunning's final average, 238.92. Cunning outperforms, okay, if you give up Fortress and manage to put in Cunning and you give up some Berserker, all right, it comes out to more, 238.92. So Cunning overtakes once you get to about 1,500 shields. Pulse at 1,500 shields will slightly, a tiny bit, destroy the Raw version at 232.76 versus Cunning at 238.92. Cunning is still coming out on top. Now, what happens when we start to push the crit rate higher? Okay, let's talk about it. Let's say we get to okay, let's put a realistic number in a fight. 2,500 shields. 2,500 shields gives you 50%. Okay, let's see the breakdown. This is 57 now. Okay, so it's 251.86. I'm just gonna copy that here. Okay, and then I'll move this all the way along here. Oh, sorry, change this one. Okay, sorry, I think the recording got paused because I forgot that I can't use the command keys here. My bad about that. If I wanna show the math right, I'm actually supposed to do it in a different way. I made a separate board solely for this. Okay, because I figured you guys would want to see the proper mathematics behind it. Okay, let's unbold this. Okay, so I made a second diagram just to showcase this. All right, here you'd have 60. Pulse is going to be a bit different again, okay? Now Pulse here, we are at 50. Now this is not affected because it's still maximized. So all we want to do is we want to do something like that. Okay, we'll go here again. Like that. Here again. Oops. And like that. Okay. This is where, like, if we get to 50% crit rate, this is where things get fun. Okay. You'll start to see a stark difference, okay, when we're talking about this. And the reason is because the raw damage average, okay, is 251.86. You'll notice it's actually overtaken the pulse average. Why? Because the Pulse average was living off the guaranteed 5th hit. The guaranteed 5th hit was boosting the overall damage, and as you go higher and higher in crit rate, this actually loses out to the raw. If you get to 100% crit rate, Pulse will lose out to the raw. Now, the difference is minimal. The difference is tiny. But the difference is huge when you take into account Cunning. Look, it's 267.88 versus 251.86. This is why my hyper build with Cunning used this formula whereby I put in a +3 Berserker, I sacrifice my Fortress to get the extra Cunning, and overall it just devastates. It just devastates so heavily. Now, this again was something only possible with my Chain Blades because the Chain Blades have a lot of dodges to maintain the bonuses. The Pike, on the other hand, I try to use my normal survival build because the raw build still works better for the Pike, and I just like it better than the Cunning build for the Pike because I don't like to give up the opening shields. And the reason is because when you take any current hit point damage, it's going to reduce your tenacious damage, which means your raw damage is affected. So even if you're going, like, unless you got perfect dodges with the War Pike, I don't recommend the Cunning build for it. But either way, you can start to see the difference. You can start to see why Raw and Pulse are not exactly... I wouldn't say they're interchangeable, but in order to even get this, you'd have to be stripping away Fortress, which is giving you the baseline shields and baseline crit. And that is where Pulse is barely even with this. What if you replace Berserker entirely with Pulse? What happens then? The DPS goes down hella low in average terms compared to your raw. That's because a 15% crit damage increase is not worth it. Even if you were to, you know, go in with that. Okay, this is a whole different ball game. Let's have a look-see. All that. Now this one will be affected because we're removing this. So you'd end up doing something like that. Okay, I'm just gonna show you for posterity's sake before I end this. You wanna at least see where all these numbers are coming from. Okay, you can make your own Excel sheet if you want to see all the formulas in action, but the DPS with Pulse, if you don't strip off Fortress to add another 20% from Berserker, this is, oh sorry, wait, that's not fair. Because without Berserker you get 32%. My bad. Okay, sorry, I gotta redo that. Almost forgot. It wouldn't be a fair test if I didn't do the numbers correctly. Sorry. Now this might honestly be a long-ass explanation for such a small thing, but I'm honestly tired of people thinking Pulse Cell is God when it's not. Okay, final averages. If you strip away Berserker, right? So you're getting your full benefit of Tenacious with the toughness increase, yeah? Okay, your Pulse average comes out to 232.13 versus your Raw. This is with Berserker, Tenacious, Predator. No additional Pulse anything, and this is at 2,500 shields. Okay? Your Raw comes out to 251.86 average damage. That's literally just how it is. That's why increasing your raw damage is so important in all of my builds. That's why you don't see me go for crits unless I have extra room. Because the only way that your Cunning is overtaking this is with the high crit rates. Now, don't get me wrong, Cunning still has a lot of viability, okay? Let's not put any Berserker in there, okay? Just Tenacious and Predator. It's still not too bad. Does it come out to less than your Raw? Yes. Yes. At 60% crit rate, it still comes out to less than my Raw. But if I were to go 100%, right? Let's just for the sake of explanation with all this. If I go 100%, once you reach 100%, your Cunning overtakes your Raw. Just so you know. So Cunning is not bad, But at 100% with pulse, what happens then? It falls completely behind. 275.55. This is at 100% crit rate versus Cunning at 300.6 and Raw at 294. Raw damage is literally one of the most important damage types in the game. And I hope that this mathematical explanation has helped you to understand why why Pulse is not the greatest cell in the world. It is a great cell if you don't have 100% crit rate. It is not a great cell if you're running a Tenacious build, because you'd be sacrificing raw damage for Pulse. So please remember that. It may look cool. It may look cool. But its place is in half-life builds, not in high damage Tenacious builds. Because you can see from the averages that I'm putting out, and you can change your damage to whatever damage you see yourself doing without any cells or whatever. You can change this damage to whatever. You'd still see the same averages. There's literally no difference there. Okay, because raw damage is the first multiplier in the whole system. That's why it is so important. It is the first multiplier. Okay? And attack speed is also super important because it's the last multiplier, so it's multiplying the whole damn thing. If you can fit it in, please do. I can't in most of my builds, but anyway, I hope this explanation has helped people to understand the pulse cell better and the mathematics behind crits and crit rates better. Okay? So ladies and gents, thank you very, 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 very much for watching this. I know it was a long mathematical lecture, but you know, I just hope it helps people. All right, and once again, you want to support my content, drop me a tip, all right, if you feel like it. Shout out to my man Lewis, who's always tipping me. Thank you very much. And also don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want to see more of this content. All right, hopefully you won't want to see more of this content because this mathematical breakdown is boring as fuck. All right, but I just like doing math. So when I do all my math in the back line, this is what, before I produce my builds for you guys, these are the number crunchings that I'm going through in the back end. All right, I hope nobody else wants to see more numbers, but anyway. Thank you very much for watching. See you on the next one.